Do you like warlocks? If not, are you interested in building or playing the ultimate summoner in D&D? Someone who brings multiple pets to the fight that will do your bidding and eliminate your enemies while also soaking up damage for you to keep you safe? Well, if so, you are going to absolutely love today's build, and spoiler warning, this thing is one of the hardest hitting builds I've ever done. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4, I do character builds for my favorite role-playing games, primarily. I like to crunch numbers about them, I like to theorycraft about them, not so that I can tell you the right or the best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that is both fun but also powerful to play. So if you also enjoy building characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you're into theorycrafting, or if you're just looking for some tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm so glad you're here. So thank you for watching. My name is Colby. Right, so one of the earliest concept builds I ever did, one of those, I'm putting artificial restraints on myself in the name of character and then trying to optimize inside those restraints that end up being kind of weird and fun and sometimes stronger than you think, was the Pokemon trainer right up there. The concept for that build was essentially how much damage could we do if we tried to make a build that could only do damage via the things that it summoned. No attacks of their own, but they tried to get as many different pets and summons as possible. Could they compete damage-wise? Would it be viable? It was a fun exercise, a real Frankenstein of a multi-class. But in the end, it just kind of did fine. The reality is, D&D 5e has never been particularly good at pet classes, right? Not in the way we might think of them in, say, the World of Warcraft vein. Nice timing on that illusion, considering that Wizards of the Coast just announced an upcoming WoW crossover book. In that game, and many others I'm sure, you could build a hunter or a warlock in a way that the vast majority of the damage and often tanking that your character did was, in fact, via the pet, right? Or a summoned demon, etc. It's a character concept that a lot of people love, but again, that in 5e and 5.5 has never been done particularly well. With the Beastmaster and any other pet subclass, the pet or the summon tend to feel, to me at least, like little more than something tacked on that might give a little lift to damage or utility, but that's kind of about it. But then Arcana Unleashed came out. Wizards of the Coast started selling copies of the new book at Gen Con a couple of weeks ago at the time that this video is coming out, which actually surprised me and every other content creator that I'm friends with. And we got to take a look inside it at everything. Not just the preview stuff we were given before. And mixed in with what we saw was a lot of stuff that seems to be adding a lot more oomph to summons and pets, familiars especially. There are feats to do this, spells to do this, and even a couple of subclasses that are bringing more options and more power to summoned creatures. Namely, the brand new Vestige Warlock subclass and the updated Conjurer Wizard. As I was looking through everything in the book, I started to wonder if we couldn't build a stronger pet and summons focused build than we've ever been able to before. And I got kind of excited to take a crack at it. So that, yes, is what we're doing today. Focusing on the new Vestige Warlock. For the record, the Conjurer Wizard will make a fantastic summoner once they hit level 14 especially, potentially becoming the most powerful summoner in all of D&D, I think, at that level. But before that, they're a little less potent, in my opinion, than the Vestige Warlock, so that's what I wanted to really focus on today. Sound good? All right. Let us jump into D&D build number 264, the Pokemon Trainer 2.0. One pet, two pet, fiend pet, blue pet. Gotta cast them all. The Menagerie Master. The friends we made along the way. The fiends we made, maybe? The Friendomancer. Aww. Animal Farm. Friends, Fiends, and Familiars. Zootopia. The Pet Shop Boy. The Ringleader. I really liked that one, but thanks to everyone on the Discord server for all of your fantastic suggestions. As always, in the end, I think I gotta go with the one suggested from John, just straight up John, the class Menagerie. Yeah, I love me a good Tennessee Williams illusion. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for the build this week. And just as a reminder, he's got a Kickstarter out right now for his Little Game Masters family-friendly TTRPG. It's called Little Game Monsters. Looks like a ton of fun. I'm going to put links in the video description as always for how you can follow him and a link to his Kickstarter page too. But first, how many of you, like me, spend several hours a day sitting in the same chair at a desk? Until recently, I've never thought too much about the quality of my desk chair, frankly. But that was before I discovered the Omni Pro from LiberNovo, the sponsor for today's video, and let me tell you, this thing has been a game changer. It has made my work life so much more comfortable in a myriad of ways, so let me tell you about them. First and foremost, this is the most comfortable chair I have ever owned, full stop. There are so many amazing features with this thing. First of all, the chair has a bionic flex-fit backrest. There are 8 flexible panels in the back of this chair alone, offering support that adjusts to your body. You can even electronically adjust the lumbar support to give you more or less support, depending on what's most comfortable for you. The recline locks in at 5 different angles, from 105 degrees almost upright when I really need to focus, all the way back to 160, fully reclined and maybe trying to ponder on whether or not watcher paladins are actually S tier. I also really love what they call their dynamic support system. It's a little hard to show on camera, but basically just about every part of this chair is not only adjustable, but it kind of adjusts with you as you move. 60 precision joints in the back, neck, and arms that just effortlessly keep you supported, adjusting to the way that you are sitting and moving. One of my favorite things about the chair is the Omni Stretch mode. It's a motorized spinal decompression system that feels great and it relieves built-up tension, especially if I've been working for a while. You just recline all the way back, push the button, and feel your spine get gently stretched while you relax and decompress. Finally, there's my very favorite thing about the chair, the active airflow seat ventilation. Yes. I mean, I run hot. I always have. But now, thanks to the super breathable fabrics that this chair is made with and the fantastic built-in, very quiet centrifugal fan inside, with a push of a button, I can stay cool all day long. There are even 2 modes to the fan, one for just a slight cooling and another for those really hot days, like today, freaking August. Oh, and the battery that powers all of this just pops in and out super easily. Ding! And it'll run for 10 to 36 hours, depending on what mode you've got it in. It even automatically detects when you stand up, and it just turns off by itself, and then it turns back on when you sit back down. I love it. So yes, it goes without saying that this is the nicest, most comfortable chair in the world, and I freaking love it. I have a feeling you will too, so do yourself a favor and go check out the LiberNovo line of products. This one, like I said, is the Omni Pro. It has all the bells and whistles, but everything they make is super high quality and worth the investment. When you do check them out, I'd appreciate it if you would use the link that I've got in the video description and the pinned comment, as always, so that they know I sent you. All right. Big thanks to LiberNovo for your support, both of the channel and of my back and my butt. At level 1 for our starting class, of course we're going fighter. I should have worn that all my wizards are level 1 fighters shirt, huh? I need to get a version of that that's like all my warlocks are level 1 fighters. Anyways, you absolutely don't have to do this. And I mean, the entire reason for me doing this is defensive. Purely and totally. So, hey, be even more of a glass cannon, jump into those offensive capabilities earlier by just starting Warlock, and throw caution to the wind. But yes, we want Constitution saving throw proficiency to help our concentration primarily. And yeah, we could get that with Sorcerer and not slow down our spell slot progression, but we also want medium armor, we want shields, right? And we'd love a fighting style. Yeah, you could go Paladin too and get some of those things with 1 level dip, but not all. Fighting style comes at level 2, no Constitution saving throw proficiency. You would get some first level spell slots and some healing too, which would be nice, but yeah, this is my path. You take a different one if you want. Your damage numbers might actually be a little better than mine as a result, if you can stay alive and maintain concentration at least. As for our species though, no, we're not going Goliath. No, we're not going Elf. Today we're going, you guessed it, Kobold. So I actually really love Kobold for this character conceptually. In my head, the story for this build is that you've got this little kobold who used to be someone else's minion, right? Maybe that's why they started with a level of fighter, yeah? Working for some ancient dragon or some other crime boss maybe, and they're sick and tired of getting pushed around. Plus, maybe they're a little cowardly. They almost got killed by some random group of adventurers a couple of times, and they are just done. It's time for them to have minions of their own. But also, Mechanically, yeah, the big draw for Kobold is not the free cantrip that they can potentially get, though that's great, but it is their Draconic Cry feature, which says that proficiency bonus times per day, they can use a bonus action to make an adorable little roar, and until the start of their next turn, all of our allies, all of them, right, have advantage on attacks against any enemies that were within 10 feet of us when we roared, as long as that enemy could hear us. No save against this. This is going to do great things for the other players at our table, for ourselves eventually, actually, and yes, of course, for our pets and summons. As for the background for this character, as always, I say, take an old one and customize it, or just make a custom background if you can, but if not, Seer Apprentice will work pretty well. This is a new one from the new Arcana Unleashed book, but I would be a little annoyed having to do this because no official background that we have, not even in the new book, gives us both the ability score increases that I want and the origin feat that I would probably want, I think, which for this build is going to be Arcane Omens. There are actually a lot of great origin feats in this book. I'm not going to go over all of them. I'm sure that you can find like all of this stuff online with a quick search. It's out there. It's public at this point. I'm sure there's a Reddit post and probably YouTube videos for that matter. So yeah, not going to go over all of them, but my favorite for this build, Arcane Omens. This feat lets us learn the Guidance Cantrip, one of the best cantrips in game, in my opinion, to help us or our allies add a d4 to an ability check, but then also says that proficiency bonus times per day, when we or an ally fail a saving throw, we can use our reaction to add a d4 to that save, potentially causing it to succeed. Look at me worrying about my saving throws. I'm growing up. Now, I don't see this origin feat as a must-have, but I really like it. I like it to help us hold on to concentration, and I like it to help our pets stay alive too, right? Now, some of you were probably anticipating that I would suggest taking the new Familiar Friend origin feat. Again, apologies, because of my NDA, I can't actually show pages in the book, even though copies of it are out in the wild now. But the Familiar Friend feat teaches us the Find Familiar spell, but we're not going to need that. But then also says that when we cast Find Familiar, our familiar gets their hit point maximum increased by 2 times our character level. That's pretty awesome, but also, as we're going to get into in a few levels, we actually won't need that benefit either. Finally, this feat says when we make an ability check and we're proficient in the skill and our familiar is within 5 feet of us, proficiency bonus times per day, we can have advantage on that ability check. Not bad, but yeah, I'd rather have guidance, and like I say, we don't actually benefit much from the other features, so I'd rather get Arcane Omens or, sure, something else like Tough or Alert or Lucky. That said, the Familiar Friend origin feat is a prerequisite for some general feats that we might want to take later, so it's still worth considering regardless. I'll get into those later on. Okay, as for our starting ability scores, I assume we're going the point buy method as always and say let's take a 15 charisma and a +2 there, a 15 constitution and a +1, and then a 14 dexterity. Pretty straightforward stuff there, I think. And then for starting equipment, we're gonna want scale mail, armor, a shield, and then like a rapier or a whip, I think. The rapier is better damage, of course, though at level 1, we're mostly just trying not to die. We've only got a 14 dexterity, right? And I think for that reason, I like the whip better here personally, since it lets us stay a little safer, since it's got reach, right? And, still lets us use a shield, but, attack from 10 feet away and then run away, probably. As for our weapon masteries that fighters get at level 1, I'd say, master the rapier that has Vex, so that when we hit with the weapon, our next attack against that enemy before the end of our next turn is made with advantage. That's nice. And or the whip, which gives slow, so that when we hit with them, enemies are slowed by 10 feet, making it even less likely that they'll be able to chase us down. We get 3 as a fighter, so maybe grab a thrown finesse weapon too, like the dagger or the dart. As for our fighting style that we get, you could go dueling if you wanted to eke out a little more damage, but I'd probably lean into defense for an extra +1 to armor class, or the protection fighting style, which lets me use my reaction to interpose my shield when an ally nearby gets attacked, right? Causing that attack and any other attacks made against them for the rest of the round to have disadvantage against your friend, which will be a great way to help you keep summons safe, potentially, if you're planning on hanging out near them, at least. Finally, at Fighter 1, we get Second Wind, which lets us heal ourselves with a bonus action for a d10 plus our fighter levels twice per day, recovering 1 use on a short rest. But at level 2, yes, our champion has grown tired of the minion life. They are ready to have minions of their own. One too many close calls has led them to say, forget this, I'm gonna get others to do my fighting for me. So they make a bargain with an otherworldly creature who promises them minions of their own. I mean, I should say, you totally don't have to go like nefarious here, right? Maybe you just sympathize with minions and feel like you could be a much better pet owner than your previous boss was to you. And you love these little guys and you want to keep them safe. I don't know, but whatever your reasons, yes, we are taking Warlock levels now. As such, we get an Eldritch Invocation right at level 1 now, and we're taking Pact of the Chain, of course, which will get us, yes, our first little pet. Pact of the Chain lets us know the Find Familiar spell, but of course when we cast it, it is a souped up version, letting us summon more powerful minions, right? I think the Imp is my favorite for this build, but honestly, in a couple of levels, it won't really matter all that much. Still, Imps are great. They can go invisible, they hit decently hard if we want to sacrifice one of our attacks to let our Imp attack instead, which the invocation allows, right? The familiar uses their reaction in that case. The Imp has advantage on saves against spells and magical effects, some nice immunities and resistances, just an all-around solid pick. But feel free to go another route if you want. We also get spells here, of course, and I would just go for the usual suspects. Eldritch Blast for a good ranged damage option, Armor of Agathis for a nice temporary hit point bump that returns cold damage if you get hit in melee. Maybe grab Hideous Laughter for a nice control option. Speaking of laughter and nice, let me give a quick shout out to my channel members and patrons, if you wouldn't mind. Hi, y'all. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me. I could not do this channel without you. I really couldn't. And for that reason, I'm so grateful to you. If you are not a channel member or a patron, I'd love it if you'd consider becoming one. There's a little button down there that says join. If you click it or check the link to my Patreon page in the video description, you'll learn about all the perks that I offer to my members and patrons. Those perks include access to the library of write-ups that I do for all of my builds, letting you kind of recreate it yourself a little more easily without having to take notes, access to the community Discord server, and access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we have that sometimes feature special guests. I give all of my perks to all of my members as long as they just sign up at like the silver level or higher, which is a couple bucks a month, and then I just ask that you pay what you think it's worth or what you feel you can afford. But if you don't feel that you can do that right now or don't want to, that's fine. I'm glad you're here. Watching and liking and subscribing especially are also great ways to support the channel, so thanks. All right, at level 3, we would be a Warlock 2, and that means we get Magical Cunning, which lets us recover one of our spent spell slots once per day with just a 1-minute ritual instead of a 1-hour short rest. That's nice in a pinch. And then we get 2 more invocations. And there are lots of great options here, honestly. I think I would prioritize Eldritch Mind to give us advantage on our concentration checks, but I'd also consider Agonizing Blast, at least for now, if we wanted to be casting Eldritch Blast semi-frequently. I'd probably swap that out later, and you can do that every time you take a Warlock level. Fiendish Vigor is great here for some always-on temporary hit points for ourselves, but also, with all of the amazing origin feats floating around these days especially, it's getting harder and harder to ignore lessons of the first ones, right? I would love to have just Tough or Lucky, or yeah, the brand new Transmuted Anatomy. This says that we have a 5-foot increase to our speed, always nice. Advantage on saves that compel us to shapeshift against our will. Okay, we might not need that a lot, but then if we fail a Constitution save specifically, we can use a reaction to add a D4 to the save, proficiency bonus times per day. I think the new Arcane Omens is better, but I mean, I'd love to have both, sure. Or yeah, take that Familiar Friend origin feat. Anyways, good luck choosing. At level 4, we would be a Warlock 3, and that means we get our subclass, and yes, we are going, as we've said, with the Vestige Patron. The art for this is so dang cool. I think I can show it here. Check it out while I read the flavor text for this subclass. Wield the remnants of a dying god's power. Your pact draws on the power of a dying god, a being once worshipped by countless followers but now abandoned and forgotten. This dying god, known as a vestige, might have been benevolent, evil, or strange and unknowable, but now it is driven to regain its former power. The vestige needs your help, and it is willing to share its remaining strength with you. Ooh, man. This is honestly a super cool concept. I mean, the story arc kind of writes itself, doesn't it? Lots of fantastic potential for interaction with you and your patron here. I love it. Anyways, as a Vestige Warlock, we get 2 features at level 3. The first and main one for us is Vestige Companion. This is our second pet, and it works very similarly to, say, the Beastmaster's pet or the Battlesmith's Steel Defender, right? It goes on our turn, we use a bonus action to have them take an action, or we sacrifice one of our attacks when we take the attack action to do so. This is important to note, right? So it's like we can activate them basically with a bonus action or with one of our attacks when we take the attack action. Beyond the usual, then we just choose if they're going to be a celestial, fiend, or undead. We determine how it looks, and we can resummon them with a 1-minute ritual. No other resources required. I can't show the stat block, so let me hit the highlights here for you. Their armor class is equal to 13 plus our charisma modifier, not bad for a pet. Their hit points are 4 plus 4 times our warlock level, nice. And they have 30 feet of fly speed with hover. They will have resistance to 1 damage type depending on what type of vestige we summon, right? Fiends have fire resistance, undead have necrotic, and celestials have radiant. They are immune to the charmed, frightened, and prone conditions, and they have dark vision. We also get to add our proficiency bonus to any ability check or saving throw they make. That's nice. Their action is just called Vestige's Strike, which uses our spellcasting stat to hit and deals a simple d6 plus 3 plus our charisma modifier in fire, necrotic, or radiant damage, depending on what we've summoned, right? It's not amazing damage, but it's not bad, especially if it's just taking a bonus action or like one of our attacks, right? In addition, they can use their bonus action once per day for Divine Power, and each type gets a different Divine Power. Fiends let you swap places with each other if you're within 60 feet. Undead curses an enemy for 1 minute, causing it to have disadvantage on attacks against you and your vestige. That's nice. And then Celestials can heal for 2d8 plus your charisma modifier, and at the same time end either the blinded, deafened, or poisoned condition. I'm just going to say pick your favorite for the kind of companion you want here. I think I'll make a stronger recommendation very late, but for now, I think I'd personally lean towards the Celestial, but they each have their pros. Moving on, for now, we also get the Vestige Spells feature here, and this is pretty great. It says that we can choose to adopt the spell list from either the Light, Life, Trickery, or War Cleric domains, and we have their spell list count as Warlock spells for us, and we'll always have them prepared. That's honestly pretty awesome. As for which of those spell lists to choose, I'm just going to say PYF. If you want to lean into support, go Life. Blasting, go Light, right? Illusion, go Trickery. But for me, yeah, sure, I'm probably going War for access to that sweet, sweet Spirit Guardians, among others. I think, granted, I'm planning on concentrating on, summon spells for most of our career, but it might be nice to have that AoE option once in a while. Anyways, importantly, also at this level, we get second level Warlock spells, and while there are plenty of good ones to choose from, the one that we are going to focus on for the build today is the brand new spell in Arcana Unleashed, Battle Familiar. Okay, let's break this down. Battle Familiar is a conjuration spell available only to druids, warlocks, and wizards. It takes an action to cast, and it doesn't require concentration, though the familiar that gets summoned from it only lasts for an hour, or until it's dead. When we summon it, we choose if it's a celestial or fiend again, or fey this time, which has little to no mechanical impact on their stat block, but we also determine if it is in brute, flyer, or stalker form, which does have an impact. More on that in a sec. They have an AC equal to 11 plus the spell's level, plus 2 if we choose the brute form. Hit points vary, but brutes get 30 and the others get 20. Regardless, they get 5 more for every level we upcast it. Their speed is 40 feet, but flyers get a 30-foot fly speed. They are immune to Charmed and Frightened, and they have dark vision. They also get to add half the spell's level rounded down to any ability check or save they make. So yeah, both of these pets here get some decent survivability. Now, similar to most summon spells we see in game these days, the Battle Familiar makes a number of attacks equal to half the spell's level rounded down. So again, lots of incentive for upcasting here. The rend attack they make isn't particularly potent. It's a d8 plus 3 plus the spell's level. That's not bad. And again, no concentration for this. The Stalker form, if we give the familiar Stalker, can prowl, which lets them move up to half their speed without provoking opportunity attacks and hide. But I think I'm going to recommend the Brute familiar for this build. I kind of envision this character as having their pets tank for them a bit, right? Similar to the World of Warcraft Warlock, if you're solo leveling, right? Now, something important here, and maybe a little bit unfortunate for this build anyways, is that you cannot have more than one familiar at a time. So if you've got your imp active when you cast this spell, it doesn't make a second familiar. Instead, it just turns that imp into a battle familiar. So like, they kind of Hulk out for an hour, which, okay, fine, that's pretty awesome. Doing this just gives them temporary hit points equal to the battle familiar spell's hit points, and when those hit points are gone, they revert to their regular familiar form. Also, we're told that your buffed familiar does keep its creature type, alignment, hit points, hit point dice, and any features granted by the Find Familiar spell. And yeah, importantly, like all familiars, this battle familiar rolls its own initiative and acts on its own turn, so you don't need to sacrifice any actions or bonus actions or anything to get it to attack. Okay, got it? Let's move on, and we're going to talk more about our pets in combat when we get to our first damage report in a minute. For now, at level 5, we would be a Warlock 4, and that means we get our first general feat, and as seems to be the case for this build especially, there are more great options to consider than ever before. Let's get into a few of the best ones from the Arcana Unleashed book. First up, we've got the Spell School Adept feats. So Abjuration Adept, Evocation Adept, etc., right? These feats all let you bump a mental stat by 1, and then give you access to a select group of spells from that specific spell school. But they don't let you cast them for free once per day or anything. They just add them to your prepared spell list. So you still need to have the spell slots in order to cast them. Otherwise it would be totally busted, because they go all the way up to 5th level spells. In addition, they give you one other benefit that varies depending on the feat. My favorites here are Abjuration Adept, primarily because it gives you the shield spell, but also Lesser Restoration, Protection from Energy, Banishment, and Mass Cure Wounds. It's not bad. In addition, it says that when we cast a spell from the Abjuration School using a spell slot specifically, we can give temporary hit points equal to twice the level of the spell slot expended, either to ourselves or to a friend. It's a nice little survival bump for us or a wounded familiar. And if we had this, I would be sorely tempted to take a level dip in Sorcerer or Bard just to have some first level spell slots, right, that we could use for shield. Conjuration Adept teaches us Entangle, Misty Step, Conjure Animals, that's nice, Dimension Door, and Conjure Elemental, which isn't typically on the Warlock spell list and would work well at higher levels here. Beyond that, though, the feat gives us a bonus to our concentration checks for conjuration spells only, equal to the ability modifier of the score increased by the feat, so our charisma, right? And since, yeah, we're soon going to be concentrating on conjuration spells, that's my plan anyways, I love the idea of adding our constitution modifier, our proficiency bonus, and our charisma modifier to our concentration checks, and then making them with advantage thanks to Eldritch Mind. Makes concentration feel rock solid, and that's awesome. For that reason, this is probably my favorite feat for this build. Oh, I mean, plus we might have that little D4 from our origin feat too if we needed it for a concentration check, right? Fantastic. That said, there is one more to potentially consider here, and it might be the best new feat that we're getting in this book, I think. Evocation Adept. What makes this amazing is really just the spell list, because we get Chromatic Orb, Shatter, Fireball, nice, Vitriolic Sphere, and then, believe it or not, Wall of Force. Man, when Monty from the Dungeon Dudes saw this, he was just like, there's no point in being a wizard anymore. I don't know. It's very good. Plus it says once per turn when we deal damage with an evocation spell, we can spend 2 unexpended hit dice and add the damage. So yeah, like souped up fireball, right? Definitely gonna make a new AoE blaster with this thing. The last feat that I'll throw out for consideration here is one of the familiar buffing feats. There are 3 new general feats meant for familiar users. Otherworldly, Soothing, and Elemental Familiar, which is probably my favorite for this build. The problem is, it has the prerequisite of the Familiar Friend Origin feat, like I said. I wouldn't plan on taking it personally, but if you think any of these feats are worth getting, then you're going to want to get that too. The Elemental Familiar feat specifically bumps a mental ability by 1 and then lets our familiar have resistance to an elemental damage type of our choice. That's nice. And says that as a bonus action, we can command our familiar to do a little 5-foot emanation of that same type of element, right, for 2d4 damage on a failed dexterity save, and if they're medium or smaller, knock the enemy prone. Problem is, as a kobold, I want my bonus action, and that little AoE damage is pretty teeny. If I felt confident that I'd always be fighting medium or smaller enemies with bad dexterity saves, then sure, lead with this, and then have all of your pets make their melee attacks against a prone enemy. Now you have advantage and a little extra damage. But yeah, as is, I think my top pick for this build is going to be that Conjuration Adept or Abjuration Adept, especially if I took a Sorcerer Bard dip. Anyways, pick your favorite, just make sure you get to your Charisma to 18. Maybe let me just take a quick moment and plug my merch. This one right here is the snarkiest of my t-shirts, but check the video description and you'll find a link to all the tees that I've got available, ranging from know-it-all obnoxious to slightly self-deprecating to downright wholesome. If you pick something up, it'll be a nice way to throw me a little extra support and get a t-shirt that you hopefully really like. At level 6, we would be a Warlock 5, and that means we get 3rd level spells, and sure, Hypnotic Pattern and Fear and everything are great, but the spell I want to concentrate on for this build is, of course, yes, Summon Fae. This spell works similar to the new Battle Familiar, right? It doesn't require any resources on our turn to get them to attack or anything, though they do go right after us, not on their own initiative like the Battle Familiar. But yeah, the Summoned Fae makes a number of attacks equal to half the spell level rounded down, and the Fae hit pretty hard. It's 2d6 plus 3 plus the spell's level. They also get that awesome little Fae Step teleport bonus action, which changes depending on the mood that they're in when we summon them, and I'd say go with Mirthful, so that we can try to charm an enemy for a minute or until, that enemy takes damage, and having a charmed enemy would keep them from attacking us or the Fae. One more way to help us stay alive. Now, importantly, at this level, we also get 2 more invocations. And guess which ones we're going to go with? This might surprise you. But I want Pact of the Blade and Thirsting Blade. Yeah, here's why. Pact of the Blade lets us summon a pact weapon, any melee weapon, and lets us use Charisma for our attack and damage for that weapon. We can also bond an existing weapon if it's magical, yes, including ranged ones in that case. Thirsting Blade says that when we take the attack action, we can make 2 attacks with that pact weapon instead of 1. Okay, so remember, our Battle Familiar goes on their own turn. Our Summoned Fae goes right after us, and we don't need to use an action or a bonus action or anything for either of them. But our Vestige Companion requires either our bonus action to attack or says we can sacrifice one of our own attacks when we take the attack action, right? Our bonus action is spoken for with our Draconic Cry. So actually, you know what? Let's get into it with our first damage report, now that we're level 6. So, since the Battle Familiar and the Summon Fae spells both last an hour, I'm going to assume that they are both active when combat breaks out. I appreciate that won't always be the case, but I think more often than not, you can tell when you're going to be in a fight, like sometime within the next hour. But if you get surprised, if you're unprepared, I would say cast Summon Fae on round 1 with your action and just forget the Battle Familiar. We've got our Imp regardless, and they can still do decent things. Anyways, assuming that both of them are out, here's what combat would look like. We'd run up to within 10 feet of our target and let out our adorable but ferocious roar. We would then take the attack action, but sacrifice our first attack to let our Vestige Companion swing for a d6 plus 7, and then with our second attack, granted by Thirsting Blade, we'd actually sacrifice that one as well. Remember, the Pact of the Chain invocation says that we can forego one of our attacks to, quote, allow your familiar to make one attack of its own with its reaction. That verbiage is very important. So assuming that familiar is in position for a melee attack, they're medium-sized in battle form, so they couldn't ride on our shoulder or anything, unfortunately. And yeah, since they have their own initiative, on round 1, they might not be in position, right? But anyways, when they are, yes, we can give up one of our attacks for our Vestige Companion and the other for our Battle Familiar, who's using their reaction for a 1d8 plus 6 attack. Then, our Summoned Fae would teleport in and swing for 2d6 plus 6, attempting to charm a secondary target. And finally, yeah, on their turn, the Battle Familiar would take their own action for another 1d8 plus 6 attack. This will all start getting much stronger once we can upcast our spells to 4th level, but for now, if everything goes according to plan, we would potentially be doing 2d8 plus 3d6 plus 25 damage. Not bad. All with advantage potentially until round 4, at least when we run out of uses of our Draconic Cry, right? But under these assumptions, averaged over a 4-round combat encounter, against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 45 damage per round, and against a 15 AC, it would be 38 DPR. And you know what? That's actually better than I thought it was going to be, I'm not going to lie. I was nervous when I started doing this build that all of my pets weren't going to be hitting hard enough, But there are 3 of them, making 4 attacks total per round, and yeah, it adds up. And that advantage we're giving them is really helping too. So compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date at this level, we're above average for sure. Competitive with tier 1 and tier 2 builds, and yeah, that's fantastic. So, okay, how does it scale? Well, at level 7, we would be a Warlock 6, and as a Vestige Warlock, we get Vestige Power. This just says that our companion regains their use of Divine Power on a short rest instead of a long one. That's the thing that lets them heal or curse or swap places with you with their bonus action. It also lets them recover the use of it when we use Magical Cunning. Also, when we're within 30 feet of them, we get resistance to the same damage type as what they have. Okay, cool. I really wish that their attack would scale. I have a feeling I might be talking about that in the final thoughts. But maybe not. I wrote that before I crunched numbers at the end game. At level 8, we would be a Warlock 7, and that means we get another invocation, first of all. And I'm just going to say PYF here, pick your favorite. I mean, sure, investment of the Chainmaster exists, but the reality is we don't benefit a ton from it, I don't think. It gives our familiar a fly speed, don't need that. It says we can command them to take the attack action with our bonus action, but this is honestly a little wonky. Do they use their reaction to do so? It doesn't say so like it does with the original Pact of the Chain invocation. I assume that's the intent, just lets them attack with our bonus action instead of requiring us to sacrifice one of our own attacks from the attack action, right? But rules as written, it's a little dicey, I think. Plus, we're fine giving up one of our attacks. Now, with the Battle Familiar spell bumping our attacks to 2 when they attack at this level, since as a level 7 Warlock we now have 4th level spell slots, right? Then maybe this invocation would be an increase to our damage again if they're using their reaction for it, meaning they'd get 2 attacks instead of 1, right? The Pact of the Chain invocation says we sacrifice one of our attacks to let them make 1 attack with their reaction, not take the attack action. So yeah, in the end, talk this over with your DM. If the DM lets you make 2 attacks with their reaction simply by you using your bonus action, then it's great. Or maybe by sacrificing one of your attacks, right? But yeah, rules as written, I don't think it benefits us much. The invocation also lets us change our familiar's damage type if they did bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage, but the battle familiar doesn't do that. They do force, which is better anyways. The invocation gives our familiar our spell save DC if they force someone to make a save, but battle familiars don't do that. So the only real benefit here to this invocation is that when the familiar takes damage, we can use our reaction to give them resistance to that damage. And, that alone might be worth the invocation. We don't want those temporary hit points that they've gotten from the Battle Familiar spell to drop off and have them revert to their non-hulked out imp form, right? So sure, consider it. Whew, that was a lot. Sorry about that. I'd also consider more Lessons of the First One stuff and maybe Pact of the Tome for some nice ritual casting utility. Let's move on because yes, we do get 4th level spells here, and that means upcasting our 2 summon spells for more attacks from our pets, which is great, but I will also mention that you should consider taking the Summon Greater Demon spell here. It's a little dicey. It summons a Shadow Demon or a Barlgura, hope I'm saying that right, and the updated Barlgura in the 5.5 monster manual is a hard hitter. But with this spell, they do get to make a save after every single turn, or they break your control and just start attacking whatever is closest. You have them controlled for an hour, but yeah, if they're making that save every 6 seconds, right? Maybe you walk into a dungeon anticipating a fight, you cast this spell, you've got control of them, but maybe a fight doesn't break out for several minutes and they're making a save every 6 seconds to try and break control. That's not going to go very well. So I would only use this spell in a situation where you weren't expecting combat but then got surprised, right? And now you got to summon something on round 1. And even then, maybe not. But I think living dangerously is fun, so sure, consider it at least. At level 9, we would be a Warlock 8, and that means we get another feat. And even though there are more great half charisma feats than ever before now, I still think I'd probably just bump charisma here and cap it at 20. I do. Warlocks don't have a ton of spell slots to take advantage of all those free spells from the new blah 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 adept, right? And a better charisma score just makes us and our pets hit harder and more reliably, among other things, so yeah, that's me. Okay, at level 9, it is time for our next damage report. Since last check, we have capped our charisma modifier for more reliable, harder hitting attacks from our pets, and more importantly, gotten the ability to upcast our Battle Familiar and our Summoned Fae at the 4th level, which will be better for their survivability and let them attack twice on their turn. Awesome. Poor Vestige Companion, no scaling for you. They're just there with their single attack still. Womp womp. Still, in a perfect scenario, we're getting 6 attacks from our 3 pets every single round, counting the one from our battle familiar that they use their reaction for, right? Did also get some nice survivability, utility, and potential control options as well. And one more use of our Draconic Cry so that we can use it every round. But at this level, averaged over a 4-round combat encounter against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 77 damage per round, and against a 16 AC, it would be 70 DPR. And yeah, I mean, that's almost double against the medium and up enemy ACs, so heck yeah, it scales. This is middle of tier 1 territory compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date at this level, and I continue to be surprised. Happily surprised, I will add. And I mean, it's not like we're only bringing damage to the game here either, right? Plenty of utility, and maybe above all, tankiness, as we put a lot of damage-soaking pets on the field that will hopefully spread the enemy hate around to keep us and our friends alive a lot longer. I love it. Let's see what tier 3 looks like. At level 10, we would be a Warlock 9, and that means we get another invocation. And I'm just going to say PYF here again. I'd probably take one of those that I've mentioned previously, or maybe Gift of the Protectors. If you took Pact of the Tome earlier, that can be a nice defensive buff. Or sure, if old invocations that weren't reprinted in the 5.5 Player's Handbook are available to you, Gift of the Ever-Living Ones is nice, but there are a lot of great options. As for the 5th level spells that we get here, I mean, as a summoner, I'd consider Planar Binding here if you or one of your friends has the Magic Circle spell specifically. This is a little complicated. I've never actually talked about it in a build before, but yeah, you first cast Magic Circle to summon a Celestial, Fiend, or Fae. That spell takes a minute to cast, and then while they're trapped inside your Magic Circle, you cast Planar Binding, which takes an hour to cast. And if what you summoned fails their save against both the spells, they're basically bound to your service for 24 hours. That's awesome, and lots of great potential creatures to have on your team here, but yeah, if things go poorly, you're in trouble, so I'm not going to assume that you're doing this for damage reports, but look into it, it's fun. If you've got the time, someone's got Magic Circle, give it a try. Hopefully you won't end up getting killed by the thing that you summon, but if you do, it'll make a great story. Alternatively, if you want to avoid all that, just grab Synaptic Static. Great AoE burst damage and a debuff. At level 11, we would be a Warlock 10, and that means as a Vestige Warlock, we get Vestige Recovery. This says that once per long rest, if your Vestige companion drops to 0 hit points, you can use your reaction and a spell slot to instead change their hit points to full, and they can teleport away from danger even when you do that. It's nice, but I mean, your Vestige companion is your weakest companion, frankly, at least at this level. So if it goes down, I kind of feel like, great, it's doing its job and soaking up damage that would have gone to me or my harder hitters or my allies. I'm not sure bringing it back is worth a 4th level spell slot, but hey, if you think it's worth it for whatever reason, then go for it. And at later levels, it probably will be. At level 12, we'd be a Warlock 11, and that means we get our 6th level Mystic Arcanum. Remember, the Mystic Arcanum feature does not give you a 6th level spell slot, unfortunately. I wish it did, then we could keep scaling our pets, right? It just lets you learn one 6th level spell that you can cast once per long rest. So yeah, no upcasting spells beyond 5th level from this point on. And so I think there are like 2 main options to consider for this 6th level spell. Create Undead, which takes a minute to cast, but then turns 3 nearby corpses into 3 ghouls that fight for you for 24 hours. No concentration required, but it does take your bonus action to command them every turn, so it's kind of a side grade in that case. I'd probably instead rather take Summon Fiend, even though it requires concentration, since that would basically replace your summoned Fae, but since you're casting a 6th level spell here, the Fiend Spirit gets to make 3 attacks every turn. I'll assume we're going with the Devil option here when we cast this spell, since the Devil hits slightly harder than the others. They're also a little squishier, but they can fly and attack from range, which I think more than makes up for that fact from a survivability perspective. Don't forget, at Warlock 11, we get a 3rd spell slot, and that's really nice. 3 5th level spell slots that reset on a short rest. At level 13, we would be a Warlock 12, and that means we get another feat. And I think I'd probably just bump Constitution here to 18 to keep adding to our health and improve our saves. If you took a half Charisma feat at level 8 though, take another one here, right, to finally cap it at 20. Alternatively, I'd maybe consider Resilient Wisdom. Wisdom saves are important, and we started Fighter. We also get another invocation here, and I think at this point, yeah, I'd probably grab Devouring Blade. This is the invocation that in 5.5 gives us the previously exclusive to fighters' third attack when we take the attack action, right? Do we have another pet who can use that attack? Nope. But maybe at this point in our career, we've overcome our own fear just enough to venture a strike of our own. Why not? Let's say we've got a halberd or a glaive or a pike or maybe even a magical heavy crossbow for our packed weapon. So we're doing a D10 plus our charisma modifier from relative safety with a third attack now on our turn. But feel free to keep the whip for like both the range and the ability to still use a shield for only slightly less damage. And you know, if we're doing this, we might as well swap out one of our invocations here that we don't need as much for Life Drinker to add a d6 of extra damage to that attack and heal a little bit if need be. And I mean, sure, whatever. Let's go all out. Swap an invocation to maybe last level for Eldritch Smite if we're just exploring what's possible, right? We have a third spell slot per short rest now. Let's have fun with it. Eldritch Smite brings 6d8 force damage when we hit and knocks them prone, depending on their size. We can't quite use it every round, but it's still really nice damage. Speaking of which, at level 13, it's time for our next damage report. So, since last check, we've added a lot more survivability and utility and control potential, but in addition, we're now running with a devil. Running with the devil. Should have done that for my outtake song. The devil's going to be shooting 3 times around for 2d6 plus 9 per hit. Our Battle Familiar gets a teeny bump by being upcast at the 5th level, and then we've got an attack of our own that we're making now for a d10 plus 5 plus 1d6 for Life Drinker plus 6d8 for Eldritch Smite. And you know what? I mean, again, exploring what's possible here. Bear with me. We could go all out, right? Once per day at least, we could cast Battle Familiar before a fight, right? Assuming we know a fight's probably coming in the next hour or so. And then use Magical Cunning to regain that spell slot, so we've got all 3 of them still. We're using our Mystic Arcanum for Summon Fiend, so we don't need a spell slot for that, right? So we could be going into combat with 3 spell slots available for smiting, if we land our attack. Yeah, sure, let's go for it. I appreciate we're blowing everything for one glorious encounter, but that's no different than most of my builds, so it's still pretty apples to apples here. And as long as we're getting a short rest between encounters, the numbers will still be really good. But under all of those assumptions, averaged over 4 rounds against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would now do 137 damage per round. And against a 17 AC, it would be 126 DPR. What the crap? Seriously? Yeah, seriously. And at this level, this is beating out every other damage build I have ever done, except the Pyromancer, which will never be beaten until Wizards of the Coast breaks the game. Yeah, including that arguably overpowered Pugilist build, third-party content. Now, some of you may be crying foul here, claiming that I'm going against the concept by making an attack of my own. I never said I was totally against making attacks myself with this character. Just that I was going to try to do as much as I could with summons as possible and prioritize them, right? The reality, though, is that while that one attack that I was allowing myself was hitting pretty dang hard, if I'm smiting with it 3 out of 4 turns, right? It was only about 30 to 35 of the total damage. I mean, that's a lot, sure, but we were breaking 100 even without that smite attack. So for those purists out there who just want to rely on summons and summons only for damage, these summons are hitting hard. And I love it. But, okay, what about endgame? Our spell slots don't scale anymore. Are we doomed? Well, not quite. It's going to take us another level to get back to some scaling though. First, at level 14, we'd be a Warlock 13, and that means a 7th level Mystic Arcanum. And you know what I'm taking? A brand new spell from Arcana Unleashed called Reweave Fate. Oh, this one is going to have the Silvery Barbs mob so mad. Should have worn that shirt instead today. Okay, this 7th level spell is available to Bards, Clerics, Warlocks, and Wizards, and says that when a creature fails a d20 test, we can cast this spell with our reaction, sound familiar, to cause them to re-roll that failed test, this time with advantage, and if they succeed, they get 6d10 temporary hit points. Nice. It's going to do great things to protect you and one of your pets. Also, I can absolutely see someone make the argument that the power levels of Silvery Barbs and this are kind of similar. This lets an ally reroll a failed save or attack, right? Silvery Barbs forces an enemy to reroll a successful one. But one is a 1st level spell and one is a 7th? What the heck? To be fair, This new Reweave Fate brings a lot more power with it. The ally gets to reroll with advantage for 1, and 6d10 temporary hit points is a lot of freaking temporary hit points that we're especially going to love next level, actually. But yes, Silvery Barbs has that little advantage to a friendly on their next roll, Rider, right? And I mean, it's a first level spell. You know what? I hope you took the Fey Touched feat so that you could get Silvery Barbs and now this one too, and you're suddenly the master of rerolling. Put these on a divination wizard and just sit back and laugh as you weave fate, like that Fate Weaver build that I did a while back. That was fun. Maybe I have to do a 2.0 of that now. Anyways, at level 15, we would be a Warlock 14, and that means we get the Vestige Capstone, Semblance of Life, which says that our Vestige Companion finally scales. Woohoo! Yes, once per day at least, we can take a magic action to cause our Vestige Companion to Hulk out also. They've been watching and learning from our familiar. Took them long enough. When we do this, we essentially turn our companion into the creature that is summoned by the Summon Celestial, Summon Fiend, or Summon Undead spell, depending, of course, on which of the 3 forms that we have given to our Vestige Companion, right? Undead, Fiend, or Celestial. And so we do this as though we had cast the spell at a level equal to half our Warlock level, so it would be a 7th level spell right now. But we do this without actually casting the spell, right? It's as though we had, meaning we don't need to be concentrating on it or anything. That is fantastic. As for which of these 3 options is most powerful, that depends. For just like pure damage in a vacuum, the Fiend has a slight edge in the form of the Devil that we were already summoning with our 6th level Mystic Arcanum, right? But a summoned Celestial Spirit can take either an Avenger form or a Defender form. The Avenger form makes a ranged attack that hits for only 1 less than the Devil, but can also, once per day, heal for 2d8 plus the spell's level. And importantly, we are told by this Semblance of Life feature that our hulked out companion gets to keep their divine power action, right? That resets on a short rest now. So if we summoned a Celestial when we buffed them up, right, they would have 1 more heal per day to use if need be. Surely that alone is worth giving up 1 damage per hit by doing a Celestial instead of a Devil, yeah? And of course the Defender version does a little less damage even, and has to be in melee, but they can also give an ally within 10 feet 1d10 temporary hit points every time they hit. So I mean, considering all of our allies that we've got going, that feels even stronger maybe, right? Of course, the most tempting and complicated option is the undead option, since there's some really nice potential synergy with our summons, right? Yes, I'm talking about the Putrid Undead Quasit combo. I talked about this in the Heldritch Blaster build that I did a few months ago. But yes, if you're familiar as a Quasit, when the Quasit attacks, they automatically poison their target if they hit, right? Very nice, as long as the enemy isn't immune to poison. Then, if you have a Putrid Undead Spirit summoned, they can potentially poison enemies who stand next to them, though the enemy gets a Constitution save against it. So now we've got 2 chances to poison, right? And then if the Putrid Undead hits a poisoned target, then that target is paralyzed until the end of its next turn. No save. Of course, that's amazing because attacks against paralyzed enemies have advantage and attacks within 5 feet automatically crit, and surely auto crits would outdamage anything else we could do, even if the Putrid Undead Spirit hits for significantly less damage per swing, right? I mean, sure, I'd say if this sounds fun and interesting, then go for it. The problems with it are, unfortunately, myriad. First of all, lots of enemies are immune to poison. More are not immune than are immune, right? But especially at higher level, it's potentially an issue. And we are higher level now. Second, there's no guarantee of the poison. The Quasit has to hit, and they only have a +5 to hit chance. Granted, they'll have advantage since we're kobold, but still. Or the enemy has to fail their Constitution save, right, against the Putrid Undead. There's a decent chance that one of those 2 things will happen, but no guarantee. But then finally, the Undead Spirit has to land one of their attacks. I mean, they'll get 3 attacks, they'll have advantage. There's a good chance that at least one will land. And if so, and if the enemy's not immune to the poison condition, and if they're poisoned, then yes, they're paralyzed for a round, and that's awesome. But also, we're using the Quasit now, and not our Battle Familiar version, so they're hitting a lot less often for a lot less damage. And again, it might not work. So yeah, I'd say keep this one in your back pocket and bring it out sometimes. When it works, it'll be awesome and amazing. I don't want to try and crunch numbers around assumptions about whether or not the enemy is going to be paralyzed and poisoned, so I'm just going to say we're using a second devil. They're probably like best friends or arch rivals with the other devil that we've got summoned. That's what looks best on the spreadsheet, but 100% go for a Celestial or Undead if you want. And to be fair, to have a Celestial and a devil both summoned at the same time and fighting for the same cause is just so ripe for fantastic roleplay and hilarity that you should do that for that reason alone.
Yeah, big talk coming from a guy in a dress.
I told you, it's a robe.
And those are pearls.
One last thing about this feature. When you buff them, they also get temporary hit points equal to the hit points of the spirit form that they take. And when they have no temporary hit points, then they revert to their unhulked out self. So do what you can to keep them safe, because if you can, this is another big damage bump for us, right? And it's one of the main reasons why I wanted to take that new Reweave Fate spell. Yeah, because it gives 60-10 temporary hit points. And the verbiage on this feature here doesn't say when those temporary hit points expire. It just says when they no longer have temporary hit points. So if they're getting low and we can Reweave Fate and get them back up with 60-10 temp HP, that'll be fantastic. All right, at level 16, we would be a Warlock 15. That means we get another invocation. Yeah, PYF, but it seems like Witch Sight should be the go-to, right? To have True Sight with a range of 30 feet, always useful. And then we get our 8th level Mystic Arcanum. Also, I'm going to say PYF here. Plenty of great options, but nothing that we'll plan on using in combat necessarily. Then again, maybe there's one. Dominate Monster would probably be my choice here to make one of the enemy one of your minions when you would rather concentrate on this than on like casting a spell and concentrating on a summon spell for whatever reason. Finally, for us, at level 17, we would be a Warlock 16, and that means we get another feat. Again, I'm probably bumping con, capping it at 20, right? Maybe take Resilient Wisdom instead, or whatever other favorite feat out there that would help you protect your summons, I think is the most important thing. Okay, at level 17, it is time for our last damage report. Since last check, the only thing we've gained to increase our damage is that Semblance of Life feature, but it is a big one. Taking our Vestige Companion from doing 1d6 plus 8 per round to, now that we're a Warlock 16, 2d6 plus 11 times 4 attacks, right? So 8d6 plus 44 if they land all their swings, of course. Dang, that's not bad. Beyond that, we've just picked up some nice defense and utility and potential control as always, but at this level, averaged over 4 rounds against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 200 damage per round. And against an 18 AC, it would be 183 DPR. And holy crap, we broke 200. Against the easier to hit targets, at least. My goodness, I did not expect that. And yeah, compared to other DPR builds at this level, that is tier 1, and again, beating out everything but the Pyromancer. Okay, I've got a lot to say in the final thoughts for this one, so let's get to it, shall we? The tier score for this build, if you take the damage they do against every armor class that we calculate for at each of the 4 damage reports and just average it into one big number, we end up with 897. And yeah, that beats out everything I've ever built for 5.5 except the Pyromancer and yeah, that Pugilist build who was just destroying everything at early levels. So their average ended up being a wee bit higher than this one, like by 5 points. Okay, so right. Is this thing broken? I mean, here's the funny part about all of this. When I first started outlining this build, I was kind of like, just please let it be average damage, at least average. I don't want this thing to be tier 4. But I was worried that it might be. The main reason for that was that Vestige Companion. It's nice and all, but it doesn't hit very hard. And the damage almost doesn't scale at all until level 14. On top of that, Warlocks don't get spell slots after 5th level, right? So I was worried that our damage was going to plateau after level 11 or so, since we got some love from our level 6 Mystic Arcanum, but there aren't any good like 7th or 8th level summoning spells, right? In fact, my original plan for the video today was to do 2 builds. A Warlock up to 13, and then at 14 do a Conjurer using the updated Conjurer Wizard from this book because their level 14 feature is just bonkers. It doubles your summons, though each of them at half health, but still, it's amazing. But then I took a closer look at that phenomenal Semblance of Life feature, and I crunched numbers, and realized that this is all pretty dang elegant subclass design by Wizards of the Coast. right when your summoned creatures are plateauing, thanks to your lack of spell slot scaling and Mystic Arcanum summoning options, right? The subclass steps in with a way to finally scale your Vestige Companion, and in a massive way. I'll admit, I still wish that the Companion scaled earlier than it does. Not everybody's going to get to level 14, right? But then I look at the numbers we've been hitting all along the way and think, yeah, maybe the scaling's fine and I'm just being greedy, right? So, I mean, is the build broken? Is this OP? I don't think so, because there are absolutely some potential downsides and weaknesses here for sure. And thank goodness, right? Who wants to play an invincible build that kills everything, takes no damage, and has no flaws? Boring. So, first up, your summons might get targeted and taken out, of course. AoE is going to be our biggest threat for sure. Nothing worse than enemy fireballs for us. But thankfully, we have some nice ways to help keep our companions alive. But you should always consider adding more. Grab that elemental familiar feat, and maybe the otherworldly familiar feat too, to give them another damage resistance. Make sure you take that protection fighting style and stay close to your most fragile friend to help keep them alive. Try to spread everybody out as best you can, especially with the summons that can fly, right? But also, I mean, I feel like your pets potentially being taken out is sort of a feature of the build, not a bug. Having your pet tank for you is kind of part of the fantasy of this character concept, isn't it? And so yeah, if they do get targeted and focused down by your enemies, well then, I mean, working as intended, right? Sure, your damage might go down, but heck, your party is thriving and victory is almost assured. And good news, until late game, bringing those pets back just requires a short rest or less. Another big potential weakness here though is the action economy stuff, right? Every summon takes an action to cast, including when you buff out your familiar and buff out your Vestige Companion. Now, they all last for an hour, but sure, plenty of times you're going to get into combat when you weren't expecting to get into combat, and in that case, the damage and tanking potential of the build is way less, no question. Your Vestige Companion is there, your familiar is probably there, but in their weaker forms. If it were me, I'd probably just use my first turn to summon my strongest companion with a spell, summon Fae or Fiend or whatever, if I wasn't expecting combat, right? And then leave my other companions as they were in their weaker forms so that we're not spending the entire combat encounter just ramping up. It's not going to cause our damage numbers to just be abysmal or anything. And, it'll save our spell slots should we need them. I am guessing that some of you are not going to love the weapon attack thing. I'm probably going to get comments on that. If you don't want to make a weapon attack, that's fine, drop it. Get more invocations to help out your utility and your defense if you can. You're still going to be at tier 1 damage levels when you've got all your pets out. You know what the biggest drawback to this build might actually be? The way that it could potentially really slow down your game and clog up the battlefield. This is always a risk with summon-focused characters, right? So if you're going to run this, be sure to talk about your plans with your DM and your fellow players to help everybody manage expectations, but then please get really good at knowing what your pets do, how much damage they do if they hit, etc., and try to streamline things as best you can. At the end there, we were making 11 attacks per round. Yeah, 11. 4 from your hulked out Vestige Companion, 3 from Summon Fiend, 3 from your hulked out Familiar, including the reaction attack, right? And then 1 of your own. If it were me, I'd probably just have the pets do average damage and not ever roll for it, as long as that's okay with your DM. Then you can just go like, okay, hit, miss. 2 hits for 12 damage each, that's 24 damage from that pet. Okay, next. Hit, miss, hit, right? It'll help things go a lot more smoothly and keep your friends from getting really annoyed with you. Because in the end, if you can get past all of these hurdles and drawbacks, my goodness, does this thing pack a punch. Or several punches, I suppose. I did not think that we would ever see a summons-focused build that could hit this hard. Outside of the old Conjure Animal spell, which was broken and I hated it. And this is all happening while soaking up damage on the battlefield, allowing you to stand back and direct traffic like the world's greatest ringleader. And I think it would be so much fun to play. So, I hope you agree. I hope that you get a chance to play it sometime. I hope I get to, maybe at least in a one-shot. But regardless, that's the build for the week. I love y'all. Thank you so much for watching, for your support, for letting me do what I do for a living. It means the world to me. It does. I hope you have a great day and a fantastic week. And if you don't, I certainly hope that you won't give up Please hang in there, okay? You got this. I hope you'll do good and be kind, and that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. What would you think if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? Boom, ba-dum, boom. Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song. I will try not to sing out of key. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. Oh, I'm gonna try with a little help from my friends. Do you need anybody? I need somebody to love. Could it be anybody? I just want someone to love. Poor Ringo. He just wants someone to love. Someone who and the pet use this battle familiar or a Barlgura. Sorry, don't even say that. Meaning we don't need to be concentrating on it, etc. Meaning we don't need to be concentrating it, or meaning we don't need to be concentrating it.